Okay, so let's get into bringing on our guest. And again, as mentioned, I was really excited. And let me jump back to my main screen here because I don't know. It's funny is that I've known Dominic for a few months now, not personally until recently, but I've been following him in the Google Cardboard's developer forum because I've been playing around with Google Cardboard from a development perspective. And I noticed that he was in there. He had a lot of posts. He was making a lot of comments. In fact, sometimes he would make comments on my post. And I said, man, this guy really knows his stuff. And then I was going through the store, and I came up with this product called Holodeck. I said, oh, that looks interesting. And I started playing with it, and I said, this is super cool. Now, when I was at AWE last year in June of 2015, I was over at Otoy, and they were showing me a demonstration of, as well as Dominic will talk about, cube maps. And I don't know, I wasn't that impressed with it. But after seeing some of the cube maps in Dominic's holodeck, I am much more impressed with it. Maybe one of the reasons is it's extremely fluid. They were using a Gear VR, but I have to say, even on my Note 4, I think if I put my Note 4 in the Gear VR versus his app is still more fluid. And I said, man, I've got to really talk to this guy. So we've had some conversation and said, hey, let's have him on the show. So no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Dominic?
Hi there. I'm the creative director for Standard 3D, working with the Mobile VR Labs, doing research and development of new VR products for mobile. I'm currently living in Canada, in my hometown, Kingston, Ontario, after spending a lot of time in California, San Francisco, over the past few years, working there in Silicon Valley. Right now I'm designing full-stack mobile VR pipelines from the cloud to the metal.
Whoa.
And you know, it's so funny, Dominic. You mentioned that, hey, I don't want to be pigeonholed as a low level, but in my book, you're at the top of the heap, not at the bottom, because those who can program that close to the silicon, the atoms is a plus in my book. It's as one of my questions I'll get to a little bit later. That requires some special gifts upstairs, and so obviously in the future, hopefully we'll have further conversations, because I would love to know more, because as I mentioned in one of my questions, it is a lot of work. Not that many people can do it, and the fact is that you're already using it and creating some wonderful stuff is something. So I'm kind of chatting here because I'm trying to find the questions. So Chris, why don't you lead off with one of my
Yeah. So how long have you been doing this, and kind of what inspired you to get into 3D?
Well, I went to high school in the '80s, and my first computer actually was an Atari 400. So I got used to, from a very young age, to programming on a very small scale. So trying to make a very slow, very small, limited piece of hardware run quickly. So I'd make games and various applications for that platform. Now, if you fast forward, 20, 30 years, what you've got is basically the turn of the century desktops power in your hand, right? So you've got and the challenges are very similar. So being able to make really stunning graphics, really stunning performance on a limited device like a mobile platform. So
okay.
I got a background with a lot of years spent in the corporate world in North America, designing and building high performance, scalable full stack systems in the large. So this is for enterprise level software. But in the end of the day, the greatest challenges were always scalability, right? If you look
right.
at high performance, high availability systems that are not allowed to crash. I mean, they have to be redundant. They have to be fast. A lot of the challenges really come down again to making small, multi-threaded systems. These tiny little threads, thousands of them running very quickly at the same time. So I've always been directed towards this sort of high-performance computing. And I think that one of the greatest challenges today, VR on mobile, right? Making that performant, making that fast and scalable and running at 60 frames per second so that you don't get motion sickness and lag. Incredibly challenging. This is called embedded systems engineering, right? So it's almost exactly like designing 3D games, say on a desktop or for a game console. Only you're incredibly limited in terms of power, in terms of what you can actually do. And the GPUs are tiny, the amount of memory is limited, the bandwidth very limited. So a lot of challenges have to be overcome in order to get performance like people expect to see from a game console or a desktop. So when I first started looking at VR, I hit these big engines like Unity, right? And so
Yep.
Google's got an integration. They've got an integration with Cardboard, a Unity plugin for Cardboard VR.
Okay.
I found it didn't scale. Right? It couldn't maintain a solid
Frame rate.
minimum 60 frame per second frame rate that is required for VR. I consider this to be a requirement. It's an unwritten rule, but everybody knows. You put on a VR app, you use a VR app that is slow, you will get motion sickness, right? If it doesn't maintain that 60 frames per second. And I think probably the Play Store, maybe Apple's iStore, they're actually going to enforce these kinds of criteria for VR apps, kind of like almost like a health code, like an age restriction. This is similar to an age restriction, where your VR apps are not allowed to make people sick, right? So this was my motivation, combined with my experience in high performance computing, was because I perceived that there was a niche here. There's a void for high performance VR on mobile. It just it doesn't seem to exist. There are a lot of forward-looking statements from companies like Unity, Unreal, Google itself, that they're going to provide this kind of high-performance, minimum 60 frames per second computing, VR computing environment for mobile, but they've yet to materialize. And,
well, let me interject in there real quick, Dominic. So obviously what I'm hearing is that you like challenges, and this obviously is a huge challenge. In fact, Lucky Palmer said that anything less than 90 frames per second is, I wouldn't say useless, but not to go. But as you know, mobile, especially the screen and the interface, doesn't really push more than 60 at this point. So if you have this capability, and obviously you have a few apps that I've been playing in the background while we've been talking, and in fact this one is just gorgeous, and we're going to talk about a little bit about your motivation to create something like this for the architectural world. And as you can see behind me, having this in a VR, and you do have the option to go to stereo with this, putting this on your head, I felt like I was in it. And I think this is like the modern Viewmaster, because unlike the Viewmaster, which is a single plane in front of your face, you're actually standing in the middle of this. And I have never really felt this immersed until, let's say, I put on the Oculus Rift. I have a DK2, but actually using your app gave me almost a similar experience. So if I were a developer and felt like, man, Unity or the Unreal Engine, which actually is very difficult to do anything on the mobile platform in a stereo view because they don't provide anything really, unless you're going with the Gear VR, how do we contact you if we want to start using your libraries? Do you make these available for people, let's say like myself, who wants to get this extra performance as a developer? Is that something you'd be working towards?
Yeah, you can contact me through the Play Store. You can just go to the standard 3D storefront where Holodeck is available, and you can contact me there, right? It's very easy, and we can talk about licensing some of the libraries for these. But what again, we're going to talk about my upcoming app, where I'm really going to be licensing rather than low-level code libraries, licensing a cloud platform again that involves that has the player, the 60 frames per second player, and allows you to write script, very similar to Unity, right? So a fully integrated environment like that, where you simply write some script code, and it'll be Lua, by the way, Lua, which works, which runs on any mobile platform, any platform really at all, iOS, Android, Windows, Mac OS, all of them, basically be able to build VR apps that way, quite similar to the way Unity does it now, only fast, right? And pretty much competing platform with Otoy's Orbix. If you notice there in the app, you have V-Ray and also Otoy as well. There's an Otoy folder. So V-Ray, that's the Chaos Group. Otoy, they're the ones that produce Orbix. That's another VR player. And then it's based on WebGL, so it runs on any browser. But again, performance issues. And they both sell renderers that generate these beautiful cube maps. So
yeah, let me interject for a moment here. This actually is something from V-Ray, correct?
Yeah, the V-Ray folder. They allowed me to, I've been in contact with Chris Nichols, who's the creative director for Chaos Labs in Los Angeles. He allowed me to use these in holodeck. Also, Otoy has an online gallery. Now these are all online. If you look at the actual player, the player is 300K. Okay, that's it. It's a third of a meg to download. All of the content that you're seeing is downloaded live, online from, in this case, the Chaos Labs site. In the case of Otoy, these are downloaded from their metaverse. So they, if you go to the Otoy website, you'll see a metaverse contest where they actually have artists competing to create the best stereo cubes. Right now, a little bit, just a word on the stereo cube format. It's also called the John Carmack long cubic format. So John Carmack from Oculus, he used to work at a company called ID Software. They're the guys that invented Quake and Doom.
Right.
So they did the some of the original high performance 3D graphics for desktop.
Hey, is this Hong Kong?
What is that?
That's an Otoy.
Yeah, there are Otoy. If you go to the Otoy Metaverse Gallery on their website, their content, they have literally hundreds of excellent stereo cubes. And it was actually while I was on Otoy, talking with them, Goldorak, the moderator on their forum is called Goldorak.
Okay.
They told me that how come there's no stereo cube viewer for Android or iOS? I mean, we don't really have a good one, right? And that's what actually started me working on Holodeck, is to provide a stereo cube viewer for 3D artists like the ones at Otoy. So again, Otoy, Autodesk, Chaos Labs, they all create software renderers that do really photorealistic ray trace graphics like this, right? Also with amazing atmospheric effects, incredibly realistic. I would say probably, I think Autodesk is the most realistic. They have a new platform called BOM, B-O-M, and their material shading, the material photorealistic effects that they get is actually, I think they're actually doing things at a chemical level where they actually describe a surface in terms of what its chemistry is, and that's how they figure out how light bounces off of it. It is just, woo, amazing. My brother, he's an architect in Dubai, and he uses it, swears by it. Now it takes days to create an average stereo cube. I mean, because it is a 360 environment. You're not just...
Let's go back just a moment. What is a stereo cube?
Again, stereo cube, it's a panorama. Okay, a 360 by 360 panorama. You can look around in all directions. I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with on mobile panorama photos. Those are 360 photos. They're panorama 360 in the horizontal, right? So you can look around in the horizontal, and you're in a 3D. It's not 3D. It's monoscopic, but it is 360. So it is a panoramic view. Stereo cube is a cube map. So you're actually in a cube, like a holodeck. If you remember the holodeck from Star Trek, they're standing in a cube, right? And that is what basically a cube map is, right? So you're standing in a cube. You've got 6 panels, left, right, front, back, top, down, and everything is projected. It's unwrapped into a single image, and then the software, like holodeck viewing software.
What kind of resolution? What kind of resolution is this? Are we talking?
Okay, for stereo cubes, current resolution is 8K.
Wow, so beyond what most people's hardware is, beyond, well beyond.
It's 8K images, and that's 4K plus 4K, right? So you've got left and right. You've got a left cube and a right cube. There are also sphere maps. There's also sphere maps. So there are various projections that you can use to provide 3D stereoscopic 360 experiences. Cube map is one. Also sphere maps. I think the more popular, what people are more used to seeing these days, are the sphere map videos. You can download 360 video, go on YouTube. If you watch it without a player, then you'll see the distortion. It kind of looks like a map, like a standard map of the Earth, where the poles get distorted. They get kind of stretched out at the top and bottom. That's called a lat long projection or equirectangular Mercator projection. So that's what people are used to seeing in terms of 360 is a sphere map. So instead of standing in a cube, you're standing in the middle of a sphere, right? Now, what the difference between why do these cube maps? It's because in virtual reality 3D environments, the cube map does not distort at the poles, right? With sphere maps, the lat long projection that is more common, you lose depth.
Top and down.
Yeah, you lose depth perception off the horizon. So all the resolution really is on the horizon, and then as you move off, you start losing 3D. You start losing resolution, right? So holodeck again is the very high res, and of course with the cube, no matter which way you look, it's constant quality, right? So it's constant 3D effect, constant resolution, and they are massive. You can go download one of these things from, say, the Atari Metaverse. They're huge, right? Even in compressed JPEG format, they're enormous. The Pong files are like a gigabyte, right? That's like the size of a movie. It's and that's for one still frame.
So the cloud is how you guys are able to do it.
Yeah, we download that. We have to have a cloud play, and we have our own proprietary compression and encryption as well, because these stills take a long time to develop and a long time to render. This is expensive content. I mean, this is just not snapping a photo. These take a lot of talent, a lot of time, and a lot of processing power as well to generate these cube maps, and a lot of fancy, very leading edge software algorithms to do all the ray tracing and the rest of it. This is right on the edge of new media content. VR is new media, and right now we don't really have a standard for it. Now, the name of my company is Standard 3D, and I'm all about standards. I especially learned that in the corporate world, where standards become so important, especially if you want to attract and maintain skill sets, right? There have to be standard skill sets, otherwise you just can't find people. So with VR, right now we're kind of in an area where I think Otoy, probably with Orbix, they're probably the most advanced in actually coming upon standard format for VR experiences, their Orbix format. And what we've done at Holodeck is essentially gone beyond that and produced essentially a competing VR media format that is cloud ready. You can download things from the cloud. if you were to put all of these stereo cubes that you see in holodeck onto a single zip file, it would be in the order of 500 to 600 gigabytes, right? And no one's going to. First of all, you can't download that from the Play Store or the App Store. There's a minimum size for applications. So really, for this huge VR, high quality 8K content that people want, obviously, because it is stunning. I really recommend all your listeners to go download the holodeck app and experience it for yourself. It is really, really stunning. And of course, it's all pre-rendered. That is why it's so fast, because the actual phone is doing very little. All it's doing is throwing bits onto the screen in 3D. There's a 3D VR stereoscopic requirement to this, but that's all it's doing. It's not generating 3D objects. It's not trying to do ray tracing. It's not trying to do shadow map. It's not trying to do all this really hard stuff that that would just slow down the experience, right? So I mean, all that stuff is pre-rendered, right? It's all pre-rendered textures, stereo cubes, and they have all of that built in. They've got all of the quality is built into these enormous stills, and the results speak for themselves. So so the quality is there.
So let's get on to the thing that I think you really wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And if you see behind me, and was your brand new app.
Right. Now this is Pitch Deck 360. Pitch Deck. So it's for VR presentations. So holodeck basically allowed you to view one kind of VR content type, which is the stereo cube format, right? The 8K image that can be converted into a 3D VR 360 environment.
Okay.
Pitch Deck now allows you to create VR presentations from over 90 different VR content types. So not just stereo cube maps, but also stills, but also stereo cube map video, and not just cube map, but also sphere map. So the more common sphere map. When I was working on holodeck, I got a lot of requests. Well, do you support the more common, 360 video, the sphere map stuff? And I was, well, that'll be in the next app. Yes. And so not only does it support those 90 different types, so all the different types of VR content that you could possibly throw into a VR presentation, it also, and this is what's really cool, it also supports composite layered VR experiences. So basically you can have a 360 video, say, of an ocean beach scene in the background, playing in the background, and then in the foreground you have a lovely interior stereo cube, right? So what you do, so you can see the ocean through the windows of the rendered interior. So this is something that my architectural clients were asking me for. Is like, well, can we make our presentations more exciting than the other guys' VR presentations? I was like, well, this composite layered video, layered VR is pretty amazing, and that's what we did. Now, there is an example of one on Pitch Deck, and the reason it's called Pitch Deck is, first of all, holodeck, that name is owned by Paramount Studios. Can't use it, unfortunately. And they have a reputation for going after people for violating copyright. So holodeck's going to go away. Unfortunately, I really liked the concept of holodeck because it's so natural to VR. It is bang on. It's very that whole Star Trek Roddenberry who predicted the cell phone, predicted the tablet, holodeck basically predicting VR. Amazing, just really amazing. But unfortunately, it's owned by somebody else. So Pitch Deck 360, I call it Pitch Deck because now, what is a pitch deck? Anybody who's ever done any venture capital or done any sales, they know, like, every salesman has a pitch deck these days. It's something they have on their laptop or cell phone, and it's basically like a PowerPoint presentation for a sales call, for being able to go in to a sales presentation and basically, here's the idea for my product or for whatever it is. Architects use this in pre-sales, right? So they have pitch decks that consist of images, of building concepts. This is what we want to build for you. My brother, he goes out to build to client sites all the time. He'll meet with Sheikh Rattle and Roll, whatever, some guy in Dubai, and he'll have an iPad and he'll have these 360 panoramic views of his architectural renderings for the new building, right? And this is what they base sales on. This is what people sign off on to actually build sales. So obviously the next step in this is to do VR presentations for building sites, for pre-selling building sites. But obviously, if it works for architecture, is known for being very advanced, especially in terms of their sales techniques, because they have to basically sell people something that hasn't been built yet. They're getting investors to build, say, a condo. They're getting investors to build a new shopping mall, to build a new, almost, my brother designs whole cities almost out in the desert for oil companies, and they want to see everything in great detail, and they want to get a very, very good idea of what it is they're investing in. And so obviously a VR environment of all of their architectural renderings is obvious next step. They want it now. I'm giving it to them now. Also now here you're seeing, isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that look great? I've never seen it look so. My test machines are not very good. This is amazing. So right now what you're seeing is a stereo cube interior environment. It's the same one that you saw on holodeck. And in the background there, you see an ocean. There's the ocean waves playing in the background through the windows. And then if you just go there, there's a television playing a 3D movie. And so when you're in VR, you actually see that TV is playing not just a movie, it's playing a 3D movie. And all of this is being streamed in real time from the cloud, right? So the holodeck app, the player app itself is 300K. It's a third of a meg. You can download. I send it to people as an email attachment, right? So it's a whole new distribution way of distributing apps, right? If you keep them very small, then you don't really even need to use the Play Store. You can send people these things as an email attachment, or even a chat room attachment, and they can go sideload it and be using the thing instantly, pretty much. Do
you remember Cosmic Osmo? Do you remember Cosmic Osmo, Mike?
I don't.
Cosmic Osmo. Do you remember Manhole? Old Apple came on the diskette game. Manhole, the Manhole. No, don't remember that. It was an early game. Cosmic Osmo was really cool, and I don't know why. It just really reminds me of this because it was early on. It was exploring the boundaries of kind of what games we're gonna do. Cosmic Osmo, I think, was the first CD-ROM game I ever had, and I bet you if I pull up an image of Cosmic Osmo, you'd know what it is.
Probably not. As you know, I'm not much of a game. The only thing I can think of, Dominic, when I'm watching this is, man, I hope that doesn't go on the floor. That's a nice clean floor. Those waves are breaking right on the outside of that house.
This is Cosmic Osmo.
Yeah, I'm trying to be very dramatic. Oh yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, it had puzzles in it, but you could explore around this this universe. Mm-hmm. And it was basically the first time you could do that. It was the first time I remember ever doing that in a game where you were actually exploring around a 3D drawn universe, and there was motion in the background, and you were kind of in this spaceship. And I don't know why, but this reminds me of that, but in a new way. When I see this kind of environment with the ocean and the video going. I mean, this is stuff that's never been done.
Yeah, some of the original 3D games. I mean, you probably have a lot of listeners that don't remember the onset of 3D graphics, but it really freaked people out. I mean, it was a very powerful experience. It certainly was for me. Movies like Tron were absolutely formative for me. No one had ever seen, these artificial environments before, rendered in real time 3D, these completely synthetic environments is shocking. It's when you see something you've never seen before, it's very shocking. The holodeck definitely has that effect, that sort of new technology, new new wave of effect of this is something new. This is happening now. Now, if you notice, one thing about holodeck is it has got a touchless UI, pitch deck is a touchless UI, and holodeck as well. So it doesn't require the viewer, the cardboard viewer or whatever viewer you're using, to have any mouse or trigger at all. It's stare to click. And I did that because there's no standard for trigger types in cardboard. They have a magnet. Some use conductive touch. Some, like the higher end headsets, have actual pads, real buttons on the thing. Because there was no standard, and I want, with pitch deck, what I'm doing is creating VR for the masses. So everybody, even with older mobile phones, can view this kind of high quality experience with a very basic VR headset. It doesn't even have to have a button, right? So it's just again to increase the audience as far as I could go. That is something I didn't want to limit myself to one platform or one viewer type or one trigger type or even one content type. And so that's what Pitch Deck 360 is all about. It's all about now, okay, I kind of explored it on a very narrow way with holodeck. Now with Pitch Deck, I've opened it up completely. It's all the content types. They're layered composite content types. And also the addition of hotspots. If you look around the environment, you will see hotspots allowing you to navigate through the
by
presentation.
Just looking at it for a few seconds.
So the presentation, basically, it forms a metaverse. So you can move from scene to scene, unlimited number of scenes, and basically, it's, as you can see, you're moving into another scene here.
Without pressing any buttons or anything like that.
Right, and there's no buttons involved, stare to click. I had a twin brother who had a very extreme physical handicaps. And that's one thing that is always, when I do UI design, it's always, I try to make it accessible.
Got it.
That everybody can
use it. You want him
to
be able to use it.
Yeah, the problem with the trigger, you have to be able to do this. Well, there are people that can't do this.
Right.
They just don't have. They can't. So with stare to click, it's about as accessible as it gets. I mean, I don't know how you probably voice commands, but then some people can't speak. I mean, it's really stare to click. All you have to be able to do is move your head, and that's about as accessible.
So what else is on the burner? And I noticed this is a Droid only thing right now, but
it kind of is. What it also allows you to do is broadcast or stream live VR from one device to another, right? So using what's called RTSP. I think a lot of people know what that is. It's basically a webcam streaming format, right? When you set up a webcam at your house and you want to be able to watch what's going on in your house from another computer while you're away, you're using something called RTSP, real-time streaming protocol. So basically, the new pitch deck has an RSTP server built in, and it'll stream everything on the screen in real time, 60 frames per second, to the internet, right? And you will be able to watch, basically, with just using a standard any video player on any device that supports streaming, and most of them do. You can basically watch what's going on in pitch deck on another device like Apple iOS. So, and also this also allows you to create VR videos for promotionals, because sometimes you don't want you want to just basically show what you've done in VR and really use your VR environment as kind of like a movie set. And so the new pitch deck Cloud Studio gives you a VR camera, right, and allows you to control the camera, rotate around, pan and zoom as well. I don't know if we can see that right now. I don't think Mike has it set up, but you can.
I have it set up.
It basically so you're not relying on head tracking to look around the environment. You're actually using a camera controller, and so basically you run pitch deck on your mobile phone while you're at your desktop, and you go to the pitch deck studio website, and that gives you a camera controller. So you can basically, using your keyboard, your desktop keyboard, you can control what's going on in the mobile VR environment, right? In terms of the camera panning and zooming, and then record that video at 4K resolution, or the native resolution of your device, right? And yes, currently the pitch deck player, VR player, only runs on Android, but it's all built in OpenGL, which as you might know is cross-platform standard, and will run on anything. It will run on iOS. The rest of it, I'm having a little bit of difficulty on the App Store, on Apple's App Store, with my VR apps, getting them published because they were cardboard based. The new version of Pitch Deck is not cardboard based. It runs on cardboard, but it does not depend on the cardboard software. So I've written the platform, rewritten it completely from scratch, and Apple right now is rejecting cardboard apps from the App Store because they call it a competing mobile platform. So basically, I had to do this rewrite to get away from cardboard VR and rewrite the whole platform, and hopefully we'll have more joy getting published over on iOS. Because let's face it, a lot of my clients are very high-end architect types. They all use iPhones, and a lot of people, especially 3D designers, artists, they all use iPhones.
And iPads or whatever.
And people with iPhones buy stuff, right? People with Androids don't buy stuff. I mean, I get really kicked around because the holodeck professional version that is unlimited. It costs $10 Canadian, which is like it's like $7 American, and I'm getting kicked around because it's the most expensive app on the Play Store. It's like, well, look, it's for professionals, but unfortunately, professionals don't really use Android. They're using iPhones, especially in the 3D design environment. They're all about Apple. They're all about Mac.
Well, that's a good tip for developers out there. That if you're looking to get to the market,
you have to know who your clients are. Now, if I was doing games, I'd be all about Android. But then I'd be competing with the game segment. There's so much competition; it's insane. I decided to build a tool for architects. Unfortunately, it's in VR, and Apple is still sorting out their VR story of how they're going to provide VR. And it looks like they're going to go with Unity. Unfortunately, I've got problems with Unity. First of all, licensing. If you start selling apps built with Unity, you have to pay licensing to Unity. And also, it doesn't perform VR at 60 frames per second for these complicated environments that I'm building, VR presentations that have to be, especially for when you're selling a multi-million-dollar architectural project, it's got to run at 60 frames per second. You're not allowed to make the client sick. That is bad. It has to be an absolutely perfect experience in order to get investment on pre-sales for an architectural project. So it's all about understanding your clients, understanding their needs, understanding the technology. Obviously, we're targeting iOS. We've rewritten the platform completely to get away from the cardboard VR objection that Apple has right now, because they don't want a competing VR platform on the App Store. They want their own. Looks like it's going to be Unity. I'm just going to build my own platform and just not mention what it is, right? I guess people will just assume that it's Unity, but it's not. It's not going to be Unity. It's going to be my own. They just don't want people advertising their own mobile platforms on the App Store, which makes sense.